Stefan Baumann's The Grand View is funded in part by
Plein Air magazine for people who love painting outdoors. pleinairmagazine.com.
and by
Masterpiece Canvas, makers of fine art canvases. We supply the canvas, you supply the vision.
and by
paintingfromnature.com, a website for artists seeking inspiration, advice, and knowledge to master painting from nature. paintingfromnature.com.
$1.6 billion years ago, the entire landmass of Earth made up a single supercontinent called Pangaea. As the planet's crust shifted upon the molten magma of its core, continental shift split the gigantic body of land into 7 individual continents, displacing the planet's water as it traveled. The southwest corner of one of these continents became layered with over 5,000 feet of sediment from the advancing and receding oceans of Earth. During the continent's journey, 2 of the shifting plates, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate, began to collide, forcing a range of mountains to grow nearly 15,000 feet. The resulting watershed of this mountain range created a torrential flow of water that began cutting through the sediment of 500 million years of time, creating the 8th natural wonder of the world.
My name is Stefan Baumann, and welcome to The Grand View. When you mention the words Grand Canyon around the world, people know exactly where you're talking about. But what few people realize is that the Grand Canyon is made up of 2 separate parts, the North Rim and the South Rim. Today we're going to explore the North Rim, and you're going to see things here that you never dreamed you'd find at the Grand Canyon. So come along with me as we explore this magical place called the Grand Canyon North Rim National Park.
The side canyons are what really makes the Grand Canyon unique and grand. The canyon is approximately a mile deep, but the reason people come up to the edge and say, wow, is because it's about 10 miles wide. And that's not because of the river, that's because of everyday erosion. And I literally mean every day, every time a rock falls off, every time it freezes overnight and then thaws in the day, and those cracks just get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and the rock falls off one day. That's how the Grand Canyon was formed and has gotten so wide. The majority of side canyons are associated with fault lines. Fault lines break and weaken the rock, and then you have the erosion of that rock. Through gravity, it's vicious, it gets you every time, and water and freeze thaw, and a windy day. You get these rocks eroding, especially along places where they're already broken. You have the river cutting east to west, and then you have the side canyons with the fault lines running north-south due to geologic pressure. Rocks at the very, very bottom are 1.7 billion years old. On top of those metamorphic rocks, we start to see the sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are laid down in layers, usually deposited by ocean, by winds and sands in deserts. Any environment that you can see on Earth today is the same environment that you can see in geologic history that has laid down these rocks. So by the time you reach the top of the Grand Canyon, the rocks are 250 million years old. So you're on a totally different scale. You've dropped 3 zeros in geologic time. And then it calmed down and it became tidal flats. We had some lava flows that created some of our rocks down at the bottom of the canyon as well. And then there was a fairly calm period in Grand Canyon history that started about 570 million years ago, where the ocean started coming in. And the ocean started depositing sandstone at their beaches, shale at their tidal flats, and limestone at their tropical depths. And we see a change in the rocks when you go from basically the middle of the canyon all the way to the top. And it's amazing to imagine that in your head, because you're going from beach to tidal flat to deep ocean, back to tidal flat, back to beach, back to tidal flat, back to deep ocean. And you can just start to imagine standing there, seeing this ocean rush in, if you were to be there throughout geologic time, just standing there observing, and then the ocean going out and seeing all these layers deposited, eventually lithified or petrified, and then laid underground waiting for the canyon to be carved.
Well, what we're out here doing is tracking the condors, and we take the birds as juveniles, bring them out to the release site on the Vermilion Cliffs, monitor them closely for a while to try and determine which ones we deem more suitable or more likely to make it as an early release candidate. Release the birds. We have radio transmitters on them, and we track them on a daily basis wherever they go. We have probably somewhere between 75 and 85% contact rate, either visually or by signals. So we monitor their movements such that we know they're alive and we know they're moving. And the moment that we think that they're not moving, we go in and investigate to try and cut down our losses for birds that may, have wounds or things like that, or be sick that we need to take care of. There's no field guide written on how to reestablish California condors to North America. So we're hopefully establishing that as we go. What makes a good juvenile condor a good candidate for release is one that is, for one, wary of humans. They don't have an innate fear for humans, and that's by far one of their greatest setbacks, because people take advantage of that. People try to feed them, to get closer to them, to feed them and take a picture. You have to, I think, make the next step. If a condor is not afraid of people, what if that juvenile condor is not afraid of the first coyote it encounters? That coyote is going to kill it and eat it. And obviously that's natural selection at its best, but what we're trying to do is establish a base foundation for this population to be large enough in numbers that once nature puts its full foot down on the condors, the most fit will survive. So right now we're doing a whole lot to manipulate that and to really help them to get a foothold. I think as a society, we're so used to the life that we've created, and we've created this thing we call life. Because what you know as to be normal life in town or in cities, going to your job, coming back home, but when you're out here, you reevaluate that. I encourage everybody, if they've never done it before, if you sit in an area for an extended amount of time, do it 3 or 4 times what you think a long time is. If you think a long time's an hour, go sit somewhere for 3 hours and take a look at what goes on around you, and you'll be surprised what happens. And watching the condors brings you, or any wildlife for that matter, brings you to all these new realizations of, man, this is something else.
our ancestors came out of there. They call a place Sipap. And when they came out of there, each, I guess, clans migrated to certain areas. And they came back to this area where I guess this is where we're supposed to meet. And in Hopi, it's Hisapsinum. That means old people. And but we as Hopis call them Hisapsinum. And we still use a lot of, that's what we're still using up to date, what the old people use, and that's what we're still living with, our culture. We're still practicing the things that our old people taught us. And that's why we're here, because the Creator brought us here. He gave certain clans certain powers to do certain things. And certain clans have during the certain times of year there, each clan has a duty to perform. Right now it's the Water and Corn clan. They're going to get ready for the new year coming up, which is prayer feather season. And when this is the year, the time that we renew everything, we make prayer feathers for everything, all kinds of everybody that's alive, even little animals, little bugs, whatever is alive, we pray for that, because that's what makes the world go round, you know. I'm a Kachina clan, so my Kachina clan's deity are the Kachinas. And one of their main things is they dance for the health and well-being of all people. They pray for rain for the people, because here on the Hopi Reservation we don't hardly have any rain, and we don't have irrigation. All we do is dry farm. When we put the seed in there, the people ask the Kachinas to dance, and hopefully that they do, and we have faith and pray through them so that we can have wet moisture for our ground to plant our seeds. Hopis are still practicing their culture from day one when they first came, and they're still doing it now. That's our way of continuing what we're set out to do. Our people have a set way of life, and we have to continue that in order to survive, to continue as Hopi people, and it's very important. And a lot of this ain't going on, that's why we're losing some of it. But it was always prophesied this was going to happen. I, as a Hopi, that's my way. I'm proud because that's what we are, and we're very unique people. We're living as it was from the day our being put us here.
I'm so excited about our painting today. The Grand Canyon is one of my favorite places to paint, and especially the North Rim. The vistas from up here are just spectacular and make for a very unique painting. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, we're doing a vertical canvas, so there's very little sky in this particular painting. There's so much foreground. So I'm going to bring up the whole foreground about this much into my composition. You have to make sure that everything on your canvas is smaller than what you see in nature. You have to shrink everything down. The tendency is to paint everything too large. And if you want to get the whole scene into your painting, you're going to have to start shrinking everything down. There's a dead tree towards the right of my composition. I'm not sure if I'm going to put all of that in. I'm just going to put in a little footnote to see how it works. Now I'm going to switch to a larger brush. And one of the important things about painting, especially early in the morning, is that you have to indicate all the shadows. And there's definitely a direct line that the sun creates at the edge of the canyon in the distance. All of these formations sticking out into the canyon all are casting shadows. So what I'm doing is I'm creating all these shadows at exactly the same angle. You can almost follow the shadow and find out where the sun is. I'm going to take some more of that blue, and I'm going to very quickly just put a stain in for my sky. Make sure the negative and positive shapes are correct. Make sure that these shapes, this air in here, this negative shape of the canyon against this positive shape of the rock in the foreground, that this area in here feels correct. I'm going to take some time and mix up a darker variation of my tone to put in all the little cracks and crevices in my rocks. It's always good to try to get a lot of these dark areas in first. And I'm also going to put in the shadow for some of my trees. And now with my sketch done, we're ready to start painting. I'm going to put my little detail brush down and pick up a larger brush. And I'm going to mix white, cobalt blue, alizarin crimson, and a little tiny bit of yellow. Now you want to paint this area kind of a grayish color. There's a fire nearby, so it's causing the sky to be a little bit hazy. And take that exact same color, add more white and a little bit more yellow. And as you get down to the horizon, put it in a lighter color. As the sky reaches the horizon, it gets lighter. I added a little bit of yellow in there to get it warmer. And you want to create the feeling that the sky is getting warmer as it's coming down to the canyon. Just blend it so it's nice and soft. And then take almost pure cobalt blue and just paint the top of your canvas with pure cobalt blue. And we're just going to hint the clouds just above the horizon. Just has a feeling of a little haze and clouds resting over the canyon. Now with our sky done, we're ready to start working on the canyon. The canyon is exactly the same color as the sky, except it's darker. So what we want to do is create a darker tone of our original sky color, and that was cobalt blue, alizarin crimson, and cad yellow. I'm taking advantage of the opportunity to recorrect my sketch whenever possible. I'm going to separate all of my mountains with this bluish haze. Now remember what I said early on, that these shadows are going to be the same color as my mist in the valley. I'm going to bring that right up to the very edge of my sky, and I'm going to blend it. You don't want a hard edge on the edge of your canyon. Just slightly blend the edge. So what's going to happen is that this big, huge, massive edge of a canyon on the other side is going to be lifted by all this mist. The whole thing will be shrouded in this wonderful grayish mist, almost releasing it from the canyon and causing it to float. Now I'm going to put down my big brush and pick up a small brush. And I'm going to start paying attention to all the little details on the other side of the canyon. And just with this blue, you can cut into your base color and just create the feeling of cracks and crevices. And you can see that very quickly you're recreating the entire canyon with just a few brush strokes. I can also take my brush and use a little bit of turpentine and wipe off some of that bluish color that I just put on and expose the color underneath. And actually give the feeling of a painted canyon already. The nice thing about this is that there's just a little blue haze left on the canvas that creates that haze in the valley. So my haze is getting a little deeper in there. Now with our detail done in our background, we're ready to start doing the next layer of mountains. I'm going to still work with this small brush, but I'm going to darken this value. Again, just like with my background mountain, I want to shroud the base of my mountain in mist. This rock has a little more detail, so what I'm going to do is mix up a little brighter color. This is my yellow and my white and my alizarin crimson. And I'm going to start painting a little bit of the detail. I'm going to let some of the underneath color show through, but I also want to create some of these neat mountain tops. Just want to create just a little bit of detail. I'm really making sure that this color is definitely darker than the one behind it. But it has to be darker and cooler, which means there's a lot of blue. I've introduced a little bit more white just to get a little bit more atmosphere in my canyon. A little bit lighter down at the base. Get this color down deep into the canyon. I'm going to mix up yellow and blue together, mix up a nice green color. This will be little hints of trees where actually this mountain is starting to come closer than the other mountains, so you're going to see more detail. A little bit more yellow and white. I'm going to start putting a little bit more detail in my cliff area here. Every angle that trees can grow on, you want to kind of put that in. So put a little detail in at an angle so that the trees look like they have something to hold on to. And right now, I like the light that's on this mountain. This is a little bit later in the afternoon, but this mountain will look to me as being very significant. And spend some time here just really putting in all the cracks and crevices. This will take a little bit of time, but it's worth it. Okay, now with all that in, we're ready to start putting the highlights in on these rocks. Taking my time and putting these rocks exactly where I see them. I'm going to introduce a little bit more yellow in, because I've decided that I want to make this my main focal area. So I really want to bring the light into it. Some horizontal and vertical strokes to help break up the movement of my brush. Now as this gets further down, we want it a little darker and let it disappear into this mist of blue. Most people are intimidated by this huge, vast canyon, but once you realize that you can simplify a lot of it, it's not such a great mystery. And to be out here and listening to the birds and having this whole place to yourself really makes the experience wonderful. And now with all my details done in the background, we're ready to start working in our foreground. And I want to show you that I can pop out a rock, a few brush strokes. So what I did was I highlighted the top of the rock, and now I'm just putting in a little shadow. Remember, the shadow has a little bit more cool color in it. I like thinking of rocks as boxes. You don't want to think of them as big round objects because they'll end up looking like huge potatoes in your painting. So think of them as boxes with angles and shapes and forms and sides and bottoms. And we're just going to highlight the rocks just at the very edge. And you can see how much brighter that is than the highlights previous. Now with that done, we're ready to start putting in our branches. Now where these branches go up against the blue, really take some time and do some beautiful little forms. Be very careful at this point. Now the reason why I can get such fine lines is because I've got lots of turpentine on my brush. Now some of these branches are light. They have a little bit of light hitting them. And now with all the little branches done, we're ready to start bringing in the foliage. Just drag the brush slightly over your canvas. Notice how I change the angles constantly. My brush is going in all different directions. You do want to try to concentrate on that light that we first saw when we first came out here. The rest of it is done in a little darker color. So I'm going to introduce more blue, just bring a little bit of variations of color into this bush. Other areas I'm going to very carefully put in a few little sky holes into my tree and cover up some of those orange areas. And see, I can create a lot of branches just by putting in negative shape. A little bit of time and careful brush work. Start seeing the whole thing start to take shape. Got a little bit more white just at the tip. I want that light to really be strong right there. Notice I'm just using the tip of the brush. Now with our foliage done, we're ready to sign the painting and conclude this wonderful day at Grand Canyon. Expanded instructional DVDs that feature an hour-long demonstration of today's painting and other paintings in the series are available at the Grandview by calling 1-800-511-1337. Join us on our website, thegrandview.org, and get more information about our show. There you can download our free book, Everything You Need to Know About Outdoor Painting, along with a free diagram of today's subject. Stefan Baumann's The Grand View is funded in part by
paintingfromnature.com, a website for artists seeking inspiration, advice, and knowledge to master painting from nature. paintingfromnature.com.
and by
Masterpiece Canvas, makers of fine art canvases. We supply the canvas, you supply the vision.
and by
Plein Air Magazine, for people who love painting outdoors. PleinAirMagazine.com